The sea had been silent for 3 days. Not calm, silent. There was a difference. Waves still moved beneath the ship, but they made no sound against the wooden hull. The wind filled the sails without producing a whisper. Even the seabirds had vanished. Cale Veyron stood alone at the bow. His weathered gray hood covered most of his face. A faded blue scarf wrapped around his neck, moving slightly in the unnatural breeze. Ornate golden armor covered his forearms, darkened by years of salt and blood. A curved sword rested at his side. Behind him, his ship drifted through the endless darkness. There should have been 12 men aboard. There were 11. Cale had stopped counting after the third disappearance. The first man vanished while sleeping. The second disappeared from the watchtower. The third left his boots beside the mast and was never seen again. No blood, no footprints, no struggle, only absence. Cale had searched every corner of the ship. Nothing. Then, shortly after midnight, something struck the hull. Once, twice, 3 times. Cale leaned over the railing. A wooden chest floated beside the ship. He pulled it aboard. The chest was ancient, covered in salt and strange scratches. There was no lock. Inside lay a single piece of black parchment. Cale unfolded it. A map appeared, but the map showed no coastline, no islands, no marked waters. Instead, there was a drawing of a circular symbol surrounded by 7 black stars. Beneath it were 6 words. "You have already been here." Asterisk. Cale stared at the writing. His fingers tightened. He recognized it. The handwriting was his own. But he had never seen the map before. He turned the parchment over. There was another message. "Follow the black tide before it follows you." Asterisk. Suddenly, the ship's bell rang. Cale looked toward the deck. Nobody was near it. The bell rang again. Then again. Slowly, the fog ahead began to glow with a faint blue light. Something enormous moved beneath the water. Cale drew his sword. The surface went completely still. Then a voice whispered from somewhere inside the fog. "Cale." He froze. Nobody aboard the ship knew his name. The voice whispered again, "Come home." And beneath the black water, something opened its eyes. Cale followed the map. He knew it was a mistake. Every instinct told him to turn the ship around, yet every time he tried, the compass pointed toward the same direction. North, then south, then nowhere. The needle spun wildly. By sunrise, the fog had swallowed the horizon. The remaining crew refused to continue. One sailor begged Cale to abandon the ship. Another claimed he could hear someone walking beneath the deck. Cale ordered everyone to remain together. Nobody listened. By evening, another sailor disappeared. His sword remained beside the mast. Cale finally understood that the island was not waiting for them. It was calling them. Near midnight, the fog suddenly parted. An island stood before them. Cale had never seen it on any chart. Tall black cliffs surrounded a forest of twisted trees. At the center rose a massive stone tower. No lights burned inside. No ships were anchored nearby. Yet Cale felt certain someone was watching from the tower. They lowered a small boat. Cale went ashore alone. The moment his boots touched the sand, the wind returned. Behind him, his ship disappeared into the fog. Cale turned. Nothing. Only gray water. He reached for his sword. Then noticed something buried beneath the sand. A small metal emblem. He dug it out. His breath stopped. The emblem carried the same symbol engraved inside his sword. He had carried that sword for 12 years. He had never known what the symbol meant. Now he knew one thing. Someone had placed it here long before he arrived. Cale followed a narrow trail through the trees. The farther he walked, the colder the air became. Eventually, he reached a ruined stone house. An old man sat outside. His eyes were covered with black cloth. Cale stopped. "Who are you?" The old man smiled. "You finally came back." Cale's hand moved toward his sword. "I have never been here." The old man laughed softly. "You say that every time." Cale stared at him. "Every time?" The old man slowly stood. "You don't remember the island." He pointed toward the forest. "But the island remembers you." A distant bell rang from the tower. The old man's smile disappeared. You have until moonrise. For what? The old man looked directly at him despite being blind. To find your grave. Kale said nothing. Then the old man whispered. Before someone else finds it first. The old man led Kale through the forest. He never explained how he knew the path. He didn't need a lantern. He walked confidently between the trees as though he had traveled the same road thousands of times. Kale followed silently. The forest became darker. Soon the trees gave way to a ruined cemetery. Hundreds of broken stones covered the ground. Most names had disappeared beneath moss. Some graves had no names at all. The old man stopped. We are here. Kale looked around. Where? The old man pointed toward a large stone near the center. Kale approached. At first, he saw nothing. Then moonlight passed through the clouds. Letters appeared. Kale Veyron. He stepped backward. No. The old man said nothing. Kale moved closer. Beneath his name was a date. 20 years earlier. His breathing became shallow. Someone made this. The old man shook his head. You did. Kale drew his sword. Tell me the truth. I am. Kale struck the grave with his blade. Stone cracked. He attacked again. The grave opened. Inside was a coffin. Kale stared at it for several seconds before lifting the lid. A skeleton rested within. Its clothing had almost completely rotted away. But one object remained. A golden arm guard, identical to the one Kale wore. He slowly removed his own armor. Then compared the two. Same markings. Same scratches. Same symbol. His hand began to shake. The old man whispered, You buried yourself. Kale turned. Why? The old man answered, Because you knew you would forget. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through the cemetery. Kale looked toward the trees. A figure stood between the shadows. Tall, covered in a dark coat. A silver mask concealed his face. Two curved blades hung from his belt. The stranger raised one hand. Kale drew his sword. The masked figure spoke. You were never supposed to return. Kale charged. Steel collided. The stranger moved with terrifying precision. Every attack Kale attempted was countered before it landed. It was as though the stranger knew him. Not his fighting style, his thoughts. Kale finally managed to knock one blade away. The mask cracked. The stranger slowly removed it. Kale froze. The face beneath the mask was older. Scarred, but unmistakably his own. The stranger looked into his eyes. I am what you become. Kale lowered his sword. The older man whispered, And I came here to make sure you never become me. The cemetery fell silent. Kale stared at the older version of himself. The same eyes. The same scar near the eyebrow. The same small mark beneath the chin. But the man standing before him looked exhausted by decades of suffering. Kale raised his sword again. You're lying. The older man didn't move. I wish I were. Kale attacked. Their blades collided repeatedly. The fight moved between the graves. Neither could gain an advantage. Finally, the older Kale disarmed him. The younger man fell against a stone. The older Kale stood over him. You still refuse to listen. Listen to what? Your past. The older Kale pointed toward the tower. That place is why you don't remember. Kale slowly stood. What happened there? You wanted something. What? Another life. The older Kale turned away. Come. They entered the ruined cemetery together. The old blind man remained behind. Kale followed his older self toward the tower. As they walked, the older Kale explained what little he could. Years ago, Kale had discovered the island while searching for a legendary source of power. He believed the stories were about treasure. They were not. Beneath the island was an ancient chamber containing a black stone device. It could alter memory. It could remove pain. It could change what a person believed had happened. Kale had become obsessed with it. His older self stopped. You wanted to erase one night. Kale frowned. What night? The night your brother died. Kale's heart stopped. He had always believed his brother had died during a raid. He remembered fire, smoke, a collapsing building, then nothing. His older self continued. You blamed another man. Who? The older Kale looked at him. You. Kale stepped backward. No, you don't remember because you made sure you wouldn't. They reached the tower entrance. The doors opened by themselves. Inside, thousands of symbols covered the walls. Kale recognized several. They were carved into his weapons, his clothing, his ship. The older Kale pointed toward the symbols. Every time you used the machine, it took something from you. What did it take? Memory. And you? I remembered. Kale looked at him. Why? The older man touched his scar. Because somebody had to remember what you became. Deep beneath the tower, something began to beat. Once, twice, like a gigantic heart. The older Kale looked toward the stairs. It's awake. They descended beneath the tower. The staircase seemed endless. Every wall carried images of the same man. Kale, a younger Kale, an older Kale, a wounded Kale, a smiling Kale, a dying Kale, hundreds of versions. Kale stopped. How many? The older man answered. More than I can remember. They reached a massive circular chamber. At its center floated a black sphere surrounded by rings of ancient metal. Blue light pulsed through cracks in the floor. Kale felt something inside his head shift. Memories appeared. A boy running beside his brother. A wooden boat. A hidden cave. A fire at night. His brother laughing. Then screaming. Kale grabbed his head. The older version watched silently. Make it stop. It can't. Another memory appeared. Kale and his brother standing before the black machine. His brother was terrified. We destroy it. Young Kale shook his head. We can change everything. You don't understand what it does. I understand perfectly. You'll destroy yourself. Kale watched the memory. He wanted to look away. But he couldn't. His younger self activated the machine. The chamber filled with light. His brother attacked him. They fought. Kale remembered the final moment. His sword was in his hand. His brother was on the ground. Blood beneath him. Kale dropped his weapon. No. The older Kale finally spoke. You killed him. Kale fell to his knees. I didn't know. You knew. The machine pulsed again. Another memory appeared. Kale standing over his brother's body, crying, begging him to wake. Then Kale turned toward the machine. He whispered, I want to forget. The machine responded. His memories began disappearing, one after another. His brother, the island, the machine, the murder, everything. Kale finally understood. His entire life had been built around a lie he had created himself. The older Kale stepped forward. Now you understand why I followed you. Kale looked up. To kill me? No. Then why? To stop you from activating it again. Kale looked at the black sphere. Can it bring him back? The older man hesitated. That is what it wants you to believe. The chamber suddenly filled with whispers. Hundreds of voices, all saying the same thing. Bring him back. Asterisk. Kale stared into the machine. For a moment, he saw his brother standing inside it, alive, smiling, waiting. Then his brother whispered, Kale. Kale stepped closer. The older man shouted, Don't. Kale reached toward the sphere, and the machine opened. The black sphere opened like an eye. Light flooded the chamber. Kale suddenly found himself standing somewhere else. A beach, golden sunlight, blue water, no ruins, no darkness, no graves. His brother stood beside the waves. He looked exactly as Kale remembered him. Young, healthy, smiling. Kale couldn't breathe. Is it really you? His brother nodded. I've been waiting. Kale stepped forward. Tears filled his eyes. I thought I killed you. You did. Kale stopped. His brother looked toward the ocean. But that doesn't mean you can't change it. Kale looked around. How? Use the machine. Kale understood. He could return to that night. Change the decision. Save his brother. Erase the guilt. Start again. A perfect life. His brother extended his hand. Come with me. Kale almost reached for it. Then he noticed something. His brother's shadow was wrong. The sunlight came from the east, but the shadow pointed toward it. Kale slowly stepped backward. You're not him. The smile disappeared. The beach became dark. The figure's face began changing. First into the old man's, then the older Kale's, then dozens of different faces. Finally, they all became his own. The machine wasn't resurrecting anyone. It was learning what Kale wanted most, and using it against him. Kale closed his eyes. My brother is dead, the illusion screamed. The beach shattered. Kale returned to the chamber. The older Kale was fighting against several shadow-like figures emerging from the machine. Destroy it, he shouted. Kale drew his sword. He attacked the central sphere. The blade struck. A crack appeared. The entire tower shook. The older Kale looked at him. Again, Kale struck. Another crack. The machine screamed. Thousands of memories exploded through the chamber. Kale saw himself across different years. Different ships. Different islands. Different versions. Some had become kings. Some had become monsters. Some had died. Every one of them had eventually returned to this place. The machine had been feeding on them. The older Kale screamed, "Don't stop!" Kale raised his sword, but before he could strike again, the chamber doors slammed shut. The machine spoke in Kale's own voice. "You cannot destroy what you are." Kale looked into the black sphere, then smiled. "Maybe," he raised his sword, "but I can destroy what I was." Kale struck the machine. The sphere cracked from top to bottom. Dark energy exploded across the chamber. The older Kale was thrown into a wall. The floor split open. Black water rushed through the cracks. The island was sinking, but the machine wasn't finished. The chamber filled with figures. Hundreds of Kales, every one of them different. Some wore armor. Some carried knives. Some had scars. Some looked barely human. They surrounded Kale. The older Kale stood. "They are the memories." Kale stared at them. "What do they want?" "To survive." The figures attacked. Kale fought. Steel flashed through the darkness. He moved between them, blocking strikes and cutting through shadows. But every time one disappeared, another appeared. They knew everything about him. Every weakness, every fear, every mistake. One figure whispered, "You abandoned him." Another, "You killed him." Another, "You wanted power." Another, "You are still the same." Kale stumbled. The voices grew louder. Then the older Kale stepped beside him. "Don't fight them." Kale looked at him. "What? Accept them." The older man lowered his sword. "They are you." Kale slowly lowered his weapon. The figures stopped. Kale looked at each one. The frightened child. The ambitious young man. The murderer. The coward. The survivor. The man who wanted forgiveness. He finally understood. He couldn't erase his past. He couldn't destroy his mistakes. He couldn't resurrect the dead. But he could stop running from them. Kale whispered, "I remember." The chamber went silent. Every figure disappeared. The machine began collapsing. The older Kale smiled. "You finally learned." Kale looked at him. "What happens to you?" The older man touched his chest. "I was created from everything you refused to remember." He began fading. Kale stepped toward him. "Wait." The older Kale smiled. "I don't need to exist anymore." The tower shook violently. Stone fell from above. The older Kale disappeared. Only his silver mask remained on the floor. Kale picked it up. Behind him, the black machine began opening one final time. A voice whispered, "One memory remains." Kale turned. The machine showed him the night his brother died. But this time, there was something different. Someone else had been standing in the shadows. Someone Kale had never seen before. Kale stared at the memory. His brother lay wounded. Young Kale stood over him. But behind them stood a third figure. A woman wearing a dark cloak. She had been watching. Kale had never remembered her. The woman stepped forward in the memory. She placed a small black object beside the machine. Then she whispered, "Let him believe it was his fault." Kale's blood ran cold. The machine wasn't his brother's creation. Someone had manipulated him. Someone had wanted Kale to activate it. The figure in the memory turned. For one brief second, Kale saw her face. A scar crossed her left eye. Then the memory ended. Kale looked around the collapsing chamber. Who was she? The machine remained silent. Then a new message appeared across its surface. The witness, asterisk. Kale remembered the old man's warning. Someone else was searching for the island. Someone else knew the truth. The tower began collapsing faster. Kale grabbed the silver mask and ran. He reached the surface as the tower cracked apart behind him. The island was disappearing beneath the sea. He ran toward the shore, then stopped. A woman stood there. Dark cloak, silver pendant, scar across her left eye. Kale slowly drew his sword. She smiled. You finally remembered. Kale recognized her, not from memory, from the machine. You were there. She nodded. I watched everything. You killed my brother. No. She stepped closer. I made sure you would. Kale's grip tightened. Why? The woman looked toward the sinking tower. Because your brother discovered something. What? The island wasn't built to change memories. Kale stared at her. Then what was it built for? She smiled. To choose which memories become real. The sea behind her began glowing blue. Kale looked toward the horizon. Thousands of lights appeared beneath the water, like stars beneath the ocean. The woman whispered, your brother discovered that every memory creates a different world. Kale's face hardened. And the machine was built to open them. Kale realized the truth. The island wasn't a prison. It was a doorway, and they had just opened it. The woman stepped backward. You destroyed the machine. Kale looked at the ruins. Yes, she smiled. No, you destroyed one. A distant thunder rolled across the ocean. Then another island appeared. Then another. Then another. Kale stared in disbelief. The sea was changing. The woman disappeared into the fog. Her final words echoed across the water. Welcome to the worlds you forgot. Kale returned to the ship. His crew were alive. They remembered nothing about the island. Kale said nothing. He stood at the bow and watched the horizon. 3 islands had appeared where empty ocean had existed that morning. By sunset, there were 7. By midnight, there were dozens. Each island carried a different symbol. Each symbol appeared on Kale's sword. The black tide was spreading. Then something struck the ship. A body floated beside them. Kale ordered the crew to pull it aboard. It was the old blind man. But he wasn't blind anymore. His eyes were open. Both were glowing faintly blue. Kale knelt beside him. Who are you? The old man smiled. The last person who remembers the beginning. What beginning? The first memory. Kale waited. The old man pointed toward the horizon. Before this sea existed, there was another. Another sea? Another world. He explained that the islands were fragments of forgotten realities. Every time the machine changed someone's memory, it created a possibility. Possibilities had become worlds. Worlds had become islands. And now those worlds were returning. Kale looked at his sword. Its metal had begun glowing. What happens now? The old man looked frightened. They are looking for you. Why? Because you're the only person who exists in every version. Kale stared at him. You mean there are other versions of me? The old man nodded. Thousands. The ship suddenly shook. A second ship emerged from the fog. It looked exactly like Kale's vessel. Same sails, same mast, same broken railing. But there were no living sailors aboard. Kale watched it approach. A figure stood at its bow. Hooded, gray cloak, blue scarf, golden armor. His own appearance. The figure raised a sword. Kale raised his. The stranger shouted across the water. Give me your memory. Kale shouted back. Why? The stranger answered. Because you're carrying the one thing every world wants. What? The stranger smiled. The memory of the original world. The 2 ships moved toward each other. Kale finally understood. The island had not been the beginning. It had been a warning. And now every forgotten version of his life was coming for him. The first ship fired. The night exploded with fire. Kale charged across the deck. The 2 versions of himself met beneath the black sky. Their swords collided, and somewhere beneath the ocean, the woman with the scar watched. She smiled, because this was exactly what she had planned. The battle lasted until sunrise. One by one, the strange ships disappeared. Some sank, some vanished into fog. Others simply faded as though they had never existed. At last, only Kale remained. He stood alone on the deck. Blood covered his golden armor. His sword was cracked. The black tide had turned completely still. Then the woman appeared. She stood at the end of the ship. Kale raised his sword. "You wanted my memory." She nodded. "Yes. Why?" "Because your memory is the key." "The key to what?" She looked toward the sea. "The original world." Kale stared at her. She explained that every altered memory had created another reality. But somewhere beneath all those worlds was the first. The original. The place where Kale's life had truly begun. And inside that world was something more powerful than the machine. The first memory. Whoever controlled it could rewrite every world. Kale looked at his cracked sword. "And you want to control it? I want to correct it. You destroyed my life. I gave you a purpose." Kale laughed bitterly. "You gave me a lie." The woman stepped closer. "Every life is a lie until someone decides which version is true." Kale looked at the sea. Then he dropped his sword. The woman smiled. But Kale wasn't surrendering. He was choosing. He had spent his entire life trying to escape his past. Trying to erase pain. Trying to resurrect people who were gone. Now he finally understood. A life wasn't defined by the memories you wished you had. It was defined by the choices you made after losing them. Kale walked toward the edge of the ship. He removed the silver mask. Then threw it into the sea. The woman stared. "What are you doing?" Kale answered. "Ending the cycle." He pulled the black parchment from his coat. The same map that had brought him to the island. He tore it in half. The ocean suddenly began glowing. Every island on the horizon disappeared. One by one, the strange ships vanished. The black tide receded. The woman's smile disappeared. "You don't understand." Kale turned. "I understand enough." The world became silent. Then the woman vanished with the final island. Kale stood alone beneath the morning sun. For the first time in 20 years, he remembered everything. His brother, his mistakes, his fear, his ambition, his guilt, and his choice. He looked toward the horizon. There was only open sea. No island, no fog, no voices, nothing. Then he noticed something beneath his feet. A small wooden box. He opened it. Inside was a single piece of parchment. Only one sentence had been written. "You have remembered the first world. Asterisk." Kale stared at it. Then another line slowly appeared beneath the first. "Now someone has to forget it. Asterisk." Kale looked up. Far beyond the horizon, a single black light appeared beneath the ocean. His hand moved toward his sword. The sea began whispering his name. Kale smiled beneath his hood. The journey was not over. It had only finally become his own. The end.